so lovely to be here tonight. What a beautiful life. Give yourself some round of applause. You're so lovely.
A lot of people are talking about this new scandal, this college admission scandal. Basically, some wealthy people have been conspiring with a fraud charity organization to pay for their children to get into school through a variety of different means, all of them illicit. One being that they were fabricating documents that showed that their kid was on the crew team or the swim team so they could be admitted as athletes. And another one was flat out paying people anywhere from $15,000 to $75,000 to take the standardized test for their kids. So the net result is there are a bunch of kids of wealthy people, wealthy and influential people, who are admitted into college currently and taking up spots from people who actually deserve to be there. Now, as outraged as everyone is about what happened, I think it's safe to say that pretty much no black person, especially not one that went to a predominantly white school, is at all shocked. Because, of course, we've seen over the years, many different times people have been up in arms about affirmative action, specifically because they were angry at the fact that allowing these black people to come into school would be preventing some more deserving white person of not gaining admittance, ignoring the fact that the presence of affirmative action was because without it, there would not have been any black people in these institutions, no matter how qualified they were. But it was always funny to me that if you look at like Ivy League schools, for example, if I'm not mistaken, there are more legacy students than there are minorities in some of these schools. But you never see anyone challenge the legality of legacy students being in these places as opposed to minorities. And I remember one particular case where a lady sued for affirmative action and they pulled up her grades and other people's grades. And there were black kids who did not get into the school that she didn't get into also. And they had better grades than her. And there were white kids who had worse grades than her who got into the same school. But of course, she went for the low hanging fruit, which would be the black kids and attacking affirmative action. But I can speak from experience, and I know a lot of people have been through this as well, that when you're black and you walk through a campus, you're regarded with suspicion from the split second that you step foot on campus or sit down in the classroom. It doesn't matter if you're a Rhodes Scholar or a Morehead Scholar or you have an excellent SAT, a GPA is through the roof. It doesn't matter. You're looked at as an interloper, as someone who's only there because you were given an advantage someone else doesn't have, or you were given an allowance for being lesser than to be there. And that's a way that you're questioned both in college. You're questioned that way as a professional. You're a lawyer, but people don't have as much faith and trust in you. You're a doctor, but they would rather the white doctor come behind you and double check what you do. And see, this is a key component of how white supremacy works, and people don't understand that. And let me explain. Contrast, we'll call her Aunt Becky. If everybody remembers Aunt Becky from Full House, her daughter is one of the people caught up in this scandal. She, of course, got admitted into a school, even though she has apparently poor grades and based upon her social media comments, barely even a passing interest in education at all. Despite this, Aunt Becky paid $500,000 to get into school. And as I understand it, she's already dropped out, being that she didn't want to be there in the first place. Contrast Aunt Becky's daughter with the young black man, if you remember, I believe it was last year, who applied to 20 colleges, and he was admitted to all 20 colleges with a full ride scholarship. This young black man had a 4.68 GPA, and he scored a 1540 on his SATs. Brilliant young man. And instead of celebrating his accomplishment, a clip went viral of a group of white women on a Fox affiliate criticizing him and calling this young man obnoxious for having the gall to apply to so many schools and denying so many other kids' chances. Now, mind you, we won't get into how ridiculous that is, because he of course didn't deny anyone else a chance because he's not going to all 19 schools. So someone will absolutely be in those other 19 slots going into those colleges. But the notion of someone even getting waitlisted because they were behind this brilliant, qualified kid really upset all the white women on this panel. And this is what I want to point out. If Aunt Becky's little girl that stayed in school and graduated, and she had that piece of paper, that diploma, as she walks through life, she'll be regarded as a graduate, and she'll be treated as someone who is qualified and competent, no matter how dull or insipid her comments are, no matter how uninformed she might seem, no matter how anti-intellectual something that she does or says is. People will say, you know what, but still, she's qualified. She's a graduate, and she'll be treated as if she belongs. And based on what we have going on at 1600 Pennsylvania, she could rise as high as the White House. And I'm not even joking. And people won't question it one bit. But you see this other kid, the kid that got into the 20 colleges with the 1540 SAT and the 4.68. When he graduates, no matter how good his college grades are, he can graduate magna cum laude. He can go into whatever his chosen profession is. He will always be regarded with skepticism. If he walks into the doctor's lab, or if he walks into the emergency room to start giving instructions to everyone, there are people who will still look at him as if he does not belong. And that, my friends, that default, that benefit of the doubt for one side, whereas the other side has a perpetual shadow of skepticism, is a key component and tenet of how white supremacy works, and how it conditions you to value one group of people more than another. Before I stop, I just want to point this out. There's some cruel irony, very sad American irony, to the fact that the black kid I'm talking about, his name was Michael Brown. Now, that's ironic and cruel because there was another Michael Brown who was also on his way to college, and he was killed. And his biggest offense was allegedly stealing a box of cigarillos. But because of that offense, it was looked at that his life was forfeit, that he was a thug, that he was a monster, that he deserved death for that crime. And then you see this Michael Brown, who excels, gets into 20 colleges on a full ride, and he gets criticized for trying to excel a little bit too much, for trying to push a little bit too hard. The underlying truth behind that is that for both of them, their lives were determined to have less value from the beginning. And no matter what route people take, they're going to arrive at that same conclusion, because both of them are here and operating within a system that's based on the racial hierarchy that places them below. And people will find a reason to make that hierarchy make sense, even if it's nonsense. And sadly, at times, this results in our bodies piling up in the streets. And then other times it results in we get to watch the Aunt Becky's daughters of the world cruise through life without ever being questioned. While no matter how competent and brilliant we may be, we get questioned every step of the way.